Hello, everybody. So, starting the second week of class, but this is one of the few ones that's still running as a 16-week class. Yeah, I recognize you, Chelsea. I just was on first for a second. Yeah, that happens sometimes. Zoom remembers the last person to put their name there. If you don't know how to change it over, if you pull up the participants list, when you hover over your name there, and the buttons show up, one of the menus that pops up or that appears has a rename option on it. Okay, yeah, so starting in week 2 here, 16 weeks is kind of nice, still stretched out. There's one more thing on the sort of preview mode, but I wanted to preview it last because that's something you're probably going to do a lot of. It's actually the one we'll probably do the most in the modern world. And I figured I'd go ahead and accept your assignments if you want to do it this way. And that's going to be JSP pages. Pages to duplicate, so Java server pages. And that's where we do basically an HTML file, but we embed Java code in it. So before the server transmits it, it runs the Java code, and then the result of that code gets transmitted. So instead of the traditional main method set up to run on an individual desktop one at a time, you can just put the Java on broadcast across the web, which every day more and more stuff moves to the cloud. We'll look at that. We'll look at that later this evening. It's not going to be a very long night tonight. Try to get everything going with NetBeans. It is a big, complicated software. Are you having trouble installing NetBeans, or just kind of getting started with it? I remembered to pull the chat room up on the TV today. Okay, yeah, it's big, complicated software, so we'll go over that, see it a few times, and all the things to do. And it's not going to be too long of a night. After we look at the JSP pages, which is, it'll be okay if you want to do your homework assignments as a Java server page, because in the long run, that's what you're going to be doing when you develop software. You're not going to make a single desktop application anymore. Every day, more and more stuff moves to the cloud. So that's probably what we should be preparing for. The reason I didn't move entirely that direction is because I know a lot of y'all will also be continuing on in a four-year degree after this, and academia moves slow. So there you will definitely see the traditional main method. But in our modern world, we're going to be doing stuff on a server and broadcasting it across the globe. Just doing stuff on the cloud, not locally. So I wanted to make sure and include that at least as an option. You don't want to forget the main method, so maybe switch back and forth. There's usually like one problem out of each chapter. So if there's maybe 4 problems for the module homework, do 2 of them with the main method and 2 of them with the JSP page practice. And that way you get practice of both of them, and or you can do both of them. It won't be long before we'll be at this point where we can just completely copy and paste. Our actual Java logic will be in individual objects. I think we'll get there around week 4. So then whether our main method isn't going to do anything but instantiate that object and say run. So all our logic will be somewhere else, and it won't matter if we call that from a main method or the JSP page. It'd be like 1 or 2 lines to get that running from either one. But let's look at that. Let's go ahead and look at how to get those going. So in NetBeans, so big, powerful IDE. This is the official one for Java. Apache is a subsidiary of Oracle, but really Apache is in charge of everything Oracle. Or sorry, Apache is in charge of everything about Java. Oracle just likes to claim Java still, that's the big one, but they pass all the decisions down to Apache. And maybe like once a year, the CEOs just sign off on all the decisions they make. So really, Apache, which is a couple of businessmen and then lots and lots and lots and lots of programmers in the course, is what's in charge of the Java programming language. And a lot of other things. You've probably heard the name Apache show up elsewhere. It shows up a lot. But they're the company that makes all the decisions. They're the ones that make NetBeans. Close that up. So to do a JSP page, or later when we get to servlets, we'd set them up the same way. We want to create a new project. Java is for big things. So NetBeans isn't really set up to install small individual things. NetBeans is an IDE. It's a place to write our code and handle all of the stuff that comes with it. So like these options on how we create a new project. Is in the chat room, a more complicated coding application. So yeah, sometimes I do refer to, I have referred to NetBeans as a text editor before, because that's really what it's for. It's a place to write our code. It's a place to edit our text files. We technically use the word IDE, integrated development environment, because it has lots and lots of tools that we need to create all our stuff, but and package our stuff. How do we organize it into folders? How do we set up the instructions for when it's time to compile it and build the final result? There's not really a lot of thought in that. There's lots and lots of typing involved in that. It's tedious, repetitive typing. So it takes a long time for a human, but there's not a lot of thought involved. So it's a really good process to have automated, because it makes it a lot of things easier for us. We don't have to set up all the folders. We don't have to type in 10 different languages so that all the different parts of the operating system know what to do when our program runs. That stuff can mostly be handled in the background automatically, and we make small tweaks to it here and there, and mostly just are able to focus on our coding in Java. And most of our IDEs would do the same thing. You usually don't want to do Java in a single text editor by itself. There's all that extra work that you have to handle. So we usually want to use an IDE. We'll look at Maven and Gradle in detail. We kind of reviewed them. For starting off, let's stick with Ant for most of our class stuff. That was the people's first attempt at the automatic build, package management sort of stuff. So a lot of the folders are still in human form. It's like the format they did all those files in. So it's still in human form, which makes it a lot easier to start off with. So we want to Java with Ant, and if it's, make sure you expand it, because we want the Java web. So expand Java with Ant and choose Java web and just web application. And then give it some sort of name. Web application, that'll probably work. I need to delete some of those other things on there. So give it some sort of name, and then we click next. There's this option, which mine's already set up. I'm getting ready to change it. But currently, if you haven't been to this screen before, your next button is probably grayed out, because we're making a web application, so we have to say what server to run on. So on this drop-down menu here for the server, choose Apache, Tomcat, or if you don't see it, click Add. Probably have to click Add the first time if you haven't done anything. It's been a while since there wasn't anything on NetBeans on my computer. So you click Add, and then Tomcat is really nice for getting started with. A lot of things are set up. It's almost fully automated. I kind of pointed at it the other day in preview mode. To deploy on Tomcat, there is a button that says upload file, and then one button that says deploy. Those other servers on the list, we have a lot more control over, but that means a lot more stuff we have to do, right? So for class, let's just go with the quick to deploy one. So Apache Tomcat, if you choose that, it's a good one to start with. Obviously, you're probably going to want to look into the other ones eventually, but for class, let's just go with Tomcat. And after you choose that, hit next. And we have to say where it's at. And if you install Jamf, you'll just navigate to where Jamf's installed. So it should be somewhere in the C drive. You have your own Jamf folder specifically. And on that list, you'll see a folder that says Tomcat. And if you click in, so we're looking at the top level of it, you'll see the bin file right there at the top, all the binary files that make it up. I always look for that folder because different computers are going to have different configurations. I think this one I know what y'all installed, so I know how it was configured. But look for your Tomcat folder, and then you want to be able to see the bin folder in the one you select. So we can see the bin folder there, so let's select this folder. Hit open. We are logging in Apache, setting up Tomcat, Mark. So when you create a new Java and web application, you may have to expand the folder. And after you give it a name, you'll see this, click the add button to find the server. And I guess that box is already gone. Choose Tomcat from the list for our class here. It's a good one to start with. And then just browse to where that's at. Your Jamf folder should be on C drive. And we'll have different configurations in different places. So once you find the Tomcat folder, you want to choose the folder that you can see bin inside of. Because NetBeans immediately needs to access the bin, the configuration, the web apps, and the work folder. So we need to get into NetBeans needs access to all of those. So we're kind of in the folder that holds all of that. Use a private configuration, set up a username and password, and then notice the checkbox to create if it does not exist. So just kind of fill that out. Something easy to remember and all that, because we'll have to sign in every time we go to start our server. Mine's already set up, but then after you fill that out, you can hit next, which let me see if I can get to it. Oh, it's already registered. It's not going to give me the next button. So on the next button is some frameworks that we will look at them at the end of the semester. So we'll leave all of them unchecked right now. Can somebody follow along? Or can you hit the next button? No. What's it saying?
It says the specified server location. Catalina home folder is not found.
Does it kind of look like this? C drive, Jamf?
Just the regular Tomcat.
Yes, just a regular Tomcat. We don't want to go into the bin folder. We just want to be able to see the bin folder. If you hit after you use your username and password, does it have like a list with a bunch of checkboxes beside it?
Yes.
Can you share your screen real quick? I can't get to that on mine because mine's already configured. I might mess up the configuration.
It will be logging on to this.
Oh, never mind. I thought you might be logged on.
After that, do I just want to hit finish?
Yes. So there's a screen after that that has a bunch of checkboxes, different frameworks we can use, Spring, and there's a couple other ones. Spring is the big one. That's the best one. So we'll definitely look at that later in the semester. But for now, just leave all those unchecked and hit finish. And I got to cancel out of it because I'm already set up. And then when you come back to the new web application, you should be able to choose Tomcat from that list. If you have multiple versions of Java, just go with the latest one. 7 will work. And the context path should have filled in automatically from whatever you named your folder. After that, we hit next. Oh, here's the list I was thinking of. Yeah, leave all these unchecked. Those are great, big, huge libraries, collections of libraries and all sorts of powerful tools to build our applications with. But we will see those later after we've seen some basic Java stuff. And after you do that, you should get something like, looks like this. So here's that new one. You'll notice there's a folder called Web Pages that's already expanded, has an index.html, so a web file. So a couple empty folders. Oh, I guess there's some XML and XML stuff and some XML stuff in one of them. And then an index one at the same level. And right below that is source packages. So most of our Java code will go in source packages. And then the stuff that's actually going to get transmitted to the client goes in the web pages folder. So I'm going to get rid of this. Well, first I'll create a new one. So in NetBeans, there's multiple ways to create a new file. The thing is, it can end up in the wrong spot. So the best thing to do is come over to the projects view there and right click and create a new file in the folder you want to put it in. So our index page is going to go here. So put new, and we want a JSP page. Is that on here? HTML, Java class, JavaScript, Java package, JSP for Java server page. And call this one index, and then we'll delete the index.html. Yeah, everything else should be okay by the defaults. If you haven't seen it before, whenever servers know to look for a file named index as far as what to start with. So we usually want to make our starting file that. So now I'm going to delete the HTML index, so we only have the JSP one. And as you look at that, you'll see there's a bunch of HTML code. It's all HTML code right now, except for this line. This is the tag that handles the importing. That one has to be there. It will automatically be generated, but it always looks exactly like that. That's the MIME type stuff. That's just the server transmits to the client first thing before the rest of the files, and almost separate from it. That it is the server is getting ready to send text data in HTML data in text format. So it's going to send a whole bunch of Unicode, and the client needs to put it back together as HTML. We'll put some Java in here in a second, but we can go ahead and run this. And when you hit the run button, a whole bunch of stuff's going to happen. You'll see it all starting up, and you should see a box asking for those credentials where you set up the username and password for Tomcat. Was everybody able to get that far? Was following along? And the video is being recorded, so as soon as it renders down after class tonight, it'll be on our Zoom link on Ivy Learn. And this stuff's right at the beginning, so it should be easy to find and watch it double speed at that point. You will have seen it before. And when that's the username and password that you put in when you configured NetBeans to that Apache server. You hit OK. It should open up a browser and go to localhost port 8080. But this, it just spit out the words directly. That's not actually doing Java stuff. We want to see how to do Java stuff first. So I'm going to close that. But you see that just when we create a default web app in NetBeans, and that configuring it to the Tomcat server, you only have to do that once. That means we'll remember it. That's why I had to cancel out on mine. It remembers what I've already done. But we probably don't want to just echo these words back. We want to do something with Java. So I'm gonna clear that out and do a little bit of space. Real quick, because I'm not gonna dig very far into this. So just a quick sidestep before we get into the Java part. If you come over to IDE, up to Window and IDE tools, you'll see this option for palette. And if you have something that it knows about, this is the drag and drop code stuff. So like if we wanted to insert a table, you can just drag table over there and it will fill out all the code for it's like the code template, so you can just drag stuff around if you don't know HTML. But I think when I asked before, most people said they'd seen HTML, right? That can be useful to HTML is a lot easier to work with if we're not the ones that have to type the tags, because that gets a little tedious, right? So when the computer can type those, that's makes it a little easier, but predictive text knows them as well. If I start typing here, you can see predictive text. Predictive text knows the HTML as well, so kind of like our variables, we'll only have to type the first couple letters of them, the starting point, and then we can take it from the list. But we probably want to see how to do some Java code here. So I'll leave some space, and the tag we put in has our angle bracket and then a percent sign. And we'll come down a couple lines and do the close that with the percent angle bracket. So kind of like our other HTML tags, only we use a percent sign and then leave some space to type things. And in between here is where we put our Java code. So string M1, I'll call it M1 for message part 1, just because I want to do a couple things, but we're not ready for complicated examples yet. I'll put the word hello, then end of instruction. Then I'll make another string, M2, says world, end of instruction. Then I'll make another string, the result, or something that was the first word that came to mind. It's going to be M1 plus, or concatenated with a space plus M2. So everybody's seen string concatenation before, right? By the time you get to a 200 level course, you've definitely seen string concatenation. It's just the plus sign. We don't have to worry about casting. Everything in Java should have a toString method built in automatically. And anytime we build our custom objects, that's the first thing we want to do is override that toString method so that we know exactly what's going to happen when we say primitive. So some Java code, it'll get more interesting soon. As soon as we finish this, we're going to get started into more interesting aspects. Start with our data types and then selection structures and maybe loops tonight. And it'll still be a short class because everybody's seen that stuff before, right? You've seen variables and selections and loops. We just need to go over the Java syntax, and then you can start playing around with them. I want to make sure there's plenty of time to play around with this stuff after we talk about it. And now to print this out, the Java code. So I'm just going to write some HTML code. The Java code says, and then in here I'll embed another one of those JSD tags. So angle bracket percent, and this time percent equals, and put in that variable name here. And I'll just do something like that to hopefully show clearly that it just gets, those tags just get embedded right in our HTML. Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions about that?
Can I run it?
Yes, we should be ready to run. I was just giving it time to, yeah, so, save, but in the IDEs, it should automatically save. There we go. So this part was entered as HTML. And this part was definitely put together in the Java code. So you see it blends together. And if we go to view page source, if we look at the source code, the client doesn't really know there was Java there. The client, our end client here only gets the result. So we can't see the Java code on this side. We just see the result of it because that ran before the page was even sent. But that's the basic idea. So use that angle bracket with the percent sign is for Java code. And then there's a couple special ones. So write your Java code and then to embed the variables once you set them up, just include an equal sign. So angle bracket percent equals the variable name and then the percent angle bracket to close that tag out wherever you want that result to show up. And then we can make really, really nice looking stuff very, very quickly. Our other option might be forms, right? We might want to get some input and process it. I'm going to come back and do the action because that's the main thing here. We're going to do here paragraph, and I'll just do a name, do an input, type equals text. And a very important thing, might remember for those who took the 153 class, we usually use class names to style stuff. It's not a hard restriction. For those who have had the JavaScript class, instead of, I think it's 253 or 255, there's two of them right now. Well, 253 is JavaScript and 255 is the full stack, so that covers JavaScript as well. But if you had one of those used to the ID for the JavaScript, the server needs the name. And I'll show you why here in a second. A name attribute equals, I'll call it username here. Just a spot for user to enter their name. Oops, I don't need a comment there. And then I'll make another paragraph with our submit buttons. Input type equals submit. The type, it's a submit type of input, so a button, and the value is what shows on it. So I'll try submit again. We also have a reset one. Input type equals reset in all lowercase letters, and the value is what shows on the button. So clear is usually a good, clear is a better word for the reset button to say. Oops. So hopefully that makes sense. Everybody remember seeing that? For those guys, the 153 class, we made the forms, but there wasn't really much we could do with them because the forms have to be processed on the server. Well, now we're looking at server-side stuff. So to process it on the server, we need two things. Sorry, I meant to turn the predictive text off. I know that just gets in the way in the class examples, and I'll try to keep it in the escape button to keep that out of the way. We need to know how we're sending stuff to the server. So the method. Your method from a form on an HTML page will almost always be either get or post. They'll behave very, very similar. The main difference is get will show in the URL. So while debugging, you probably want to have things set for get, and that way when you run it, you'll be able to see the words there. That makes things a lot easier to debug when we can see them. And then switch it to post for release so that the data doesn't show up right in the thing. So I'm going to say we're going to send it to the server with get method. And then we need an action for the server to perform. And the action will be what file to run. So I'm going to make a file called other.jsp. Yes.
on the reset button,
Yes.
I can't see what's after.
Oh, I put value equals clear. Sorry, let me, do that.
Okay,
Sorry, those Zoom thumbnails are just always in the way. Actually, with the IDE there, I could probably put them in front of the output because we're gonna see that, the output up there. So for processing the result of this form, we'll just send it to this other JSP page, and I'll create that. Actually, if you click on the project, it will put it in the right spot. So I come over here to the project name and right click, and I want a new JSP file. And notice that's at the top of the list now. It's going to try to predict what you're doing. NetBeans has some of that IntelliSense prediction stuff, so it will try to predict what you're doing. And so things move up and down lists. So we want another JSP page. I said to call it other, and it's going to automatically put the extension on there. But if you're doing it in a text editor, it is just .jsp as our extension. Oh, which I guess we can see over on the right hand side. File name .jsp. I'm going to call it other, hit finish. So we get another one here. And this one will have something similar. We're going to set up a spot for Java code to run. So our little JSP bracket or tag. I'll say that this semester, so it's in lectures. I just now realized I probably should have come up with a good word to say for that. So for the rest of this semester, I'm going to say our JSP page or our JSP tag for the spot we write Java code in. And we have a special thing. Well, kind of like the MIME type up here says, we're transmitting back and forth between the client and server with text. So that means anything the server receives is coming in as text. So we have a way to, so we're getting a string, and if they send a number, we'll have to convert that to an integer or a floating point or the data types we're going to talk about here in a few minutes afterwards. But just think about the MIME type. We're communicating with our server in text data. So everything comes in as a string, just like it's coming from the keyboard. I'll call it username. And that it's not popping up here. Get parameter. We're going to grab a parameter. Oops. And it's going to, this is the main part. I'm still missing the word there. The method we're going to call is get parameter. And then the parameter we want is the name attribute we put on that HTML tag. So whatever the name attribute is here, that's going to come in as a parameter. And am I missing a word here? I'm going to look at one of my examples over here. Oh, that's the wrong example. What's on this example? Well, that's got HTML pages. Do I have anything on here with JSP pages? That one doesn't. Oh, all my local examples have. Is it page? Check a parameter? Nope. I'm forgetting the word. I have to look at the GitHub page. Kind of like all these examples, if I expand one of these, I almost always do this with Ajax. That way we don't have to reload the page. We can just reload the element by element on the page. And I'm suddenly drawing a blank on the word. But I thought I left some examples here to look at. But I've already set some stuff up on GitHub for this. SDEV 100. This one in the web folder. Oh, that's apparently not it. Unclosed character. Oh. Yes, sorry. I'm used to typing in Python too. Our double quotes and single quotes are not interchangeable. Double quotes are for a single character, or single quotes are for a single character, and double quotes are for a string. They are not interchangeable. And there's a word I am completely forgetting here that this one has JSP page. Nope, that's an index. Request.get parameter. So that's right. When we send a request to the server, the client sent a request to the server. There's and in our example, we use the we're sending our request using the get method. So there on our server, request is kind of pre-built for us, or it's ready to go. Notice there's no object call request being set up, but it doesn't throw an error when we ask for it. So that's going to come in a lot. There's also a response. We will see that later. For now, we're getting a request from the client, and that request is going to include a parameter that there should be a parameter called username in it. And once we have that, I'll put it in our HTML. Hello there. And then our tag, angle percent equals, to throw that variable right in the sentence. Username, then percent angle bracket to finish that. Okay. So remember, we automatically have a request and a response anytime we're on the server. It's getting the request from the client, and that request should include parameters of what the client wants. Notice up here on my little tabs, other.jsp has been saved, but it looks like index.jsp is not in bold. Control-Shift-S is save all. When we're programming, we're probably going to be working in multiple files. So you don't want to use Control-S and just save the local one. Make sure you always save all of your files. That way they all change together. So now when we run this, our index page should have a little form. There's our initial just run Java code, do some stuff dynamically, spit out the output. Then we have a form, can enter the name. I'll type my name in there. Whoops. Trying to type my name correctly. The clear button just is automatically set to reset that. And when we hit submit, well, the code ran, but one of the big things I wanted to point out is up there in the URL. Can everybody see that? I can zoom in on the main part of the page, but I can't zoom in on the URL, the address. Notice all that stuff that's added at the end. So when we click the submit button, we said run other.jsp page. And then a question mark, it's like we're hooking that on. This is called a request query. You've probably seen it before, maybe not paid any attention. And then we have username equals Chris. I should probably do a couple things. Let me throw at least two things in there so you can see what two parameters look like. Because sometimes you might need to type that directly in the URL. Right? Instead of having your form automatically do that, you would just put it in a link. So like link to this other page and then attach all this other data. The question mark is like hook on all this other data. Then it's ampersand for our other parameters, but I'll actually pull that up to show it. Set another input box. The I don't know, age. That seems That's the first thing that springs to mind. Type equals number. And again, the server needs the name attribute from the HTML tag. I'll call it user age. So now we have ways to get two pieces of data from it. Over here, oh, so you're looking back and forth. You get that. If you ever need me to slow down or anything, please speak up. Those on the Zoom call. Here in the classroom, I can see people looking at the screen and be like, "Oh, I clicked over too quickly." Because this whole semester we will be clicking back and forth between files. So the example, I'll try to remember to slow down. But the examples might not be super familiar. So once you get your form together, and a lot of your forms for like the homework assignments like I was talking about, you'll be able to reuse forms over and over and over again, right? Because you're probably going to get the ones in the textbook are set up for console input. So you're probably just going to need a text input box to do most of those. So you'll be able to reuse the same form over and over and over again and just change the action on it. Then when we get over here, we'll be getting another string called user age. Again, it's coming from the client's request, and that request should have a parameter called age. That's more to the sentence here. Hello there, user. I hear your age years old. Oh, user age. And notice we get all our color coding and highlighting and all that. Does anybody have any questions about that? Because this is an active subject. So lecture is going to be a little short tonight. That way y'all have lots of time to play around with that. Because our class is scheduled at 8:50. So even though lecture is going to be short, until 8:50, I'm going to be sitting here waiting for questions to come my way. So that way there's lots of time to play around with it, because that's how we learn to program, by doing stuff. Oh, and then make sure you hit the save all button. So that's the one with the multiple save icons. Floppy disk, but some of y'all, we stopped using floppy disk before you were even probably even born. I think I still have some in closets, but I haven't really used them since about 2004, 2005. And that's, yeah. People in college probably, you might have seen them when you were an infant. Might have tried to chew on them or something when you were an infant. But we haven't used floppy disk in a while. The save icon. So now when we run it, notice it opened a new one. The old one had already been processed and transmitted to the client. So that's why I've been closing it every time. Style sheets and JavaScript or just HTML code, we can just reload the page and don't have to rerun it through the server. But the JSP pages, we have to run through the server every time. So enter my name, and my age, and when I hit submit, oh, it says no years old. Something went wrong. But up there in the query string, so notice that name attribute from the HTML tag. Username, it's like variable is assigned value. And they're all strings up there. Then an ampersand and our next one. And you've probably seen those before. Anytime we do a search, you would have seen a query string. So if I come over here and look for like funny cat videos, notice up here, Google went to the search page and then hooked onto it the query string of Q equals funny plus cat plus videos. Then ampersand, a whole bunch of other stuff that has to do with the box. But our query string up there in the URL. And no spaces allowed, so you have to use a plus for the space. Plus means space up there. So let's see what's up with this null thing. That should be a number. So we probably just need to parse it, right? Turn it into a number. Let's try that. Double. I'm switch this to a double. Which is one of the data types we're going to talk about that later tonight. Double precision floating point number. The great big floating point numbers. Double dot parse double is the method. And then we can wrap all of this stuff in parentheses. Whoops. That's right, NetBeans doesn't do that. So we'll call the parse double method and see if that recognizes the number. There's something went wrong with the string there. I'll just use a letter there, 43, submit. Uh-oh. Oh, did I call it the wrong thing? Actually, I probably just called it the wrong thing. Let's stick with strings, and then we'll see that later. What did I call it over here? Oh, I called it user age. So the server had no idea what age is. So give it the right name for the parameter. And then we'll see that other stuff later. Now when we run it, there's 43, hit enter. There we go. So you see that we have a way to process the format. Some of y'all are probably kind of excited to see that, right? Went through that in the SDEV 153 class, and we see how to make forms, spend a bunch of time on that, but we can't really do anything with them in that class. So that gives you a good way to deal with those. And the big thing is your Java code goes right into an HTML page for the output, for where to output it. And in our modern world, you're probably much more likely to do this than write a bunch of main methods. Everything's on the cloud. AWS, Google, and Azure all know Java. So you can run your, it's no trouble to run Java on any of the cloud stuff. Any questions about any of those? Okay, so no questions. It's like 50 minutes of class. And I was thinking about just going till about 7:40, which means now is probably a good time to take a break. We're about halfway there, right? So why don't we take a break, and then we'll start looking more specifically at Java code. Does anybody have any questions before we take a break? Otherwise, does 10 minutes sound good to everybody? I see head nods here. So my clock on my laptop says 6:51. So we'll get back to it at 7:01 by the clock here on my laptop. 10 minutes from now.